COP, which stands for Conference of Parties, is the series of formal meetings and conferences where governments assess global efforts to advance the Paris Agreement and the Convention, and also limit global warming to 1.5 degrees centigrade as informed by the latest science. Well, I'm sure you're aware that COP29, otherwise known as COP29, has been going on in Baku, Azerbaijan, and it's been almost 2 weeks now since it's been going. To tell us more about all this, we have a panel, two of whom are joining us virtually. But let me first introduce the professor, who is an environment expert, who is with us in the studio in Lagos, Professor Emmanuel Oladipo.
Good morning.
And thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Of course, we don't talk environment and stuff like that without talking to our people at the Nigerian Conservation Foundation. We have the director with us this morning, Mr. Joseph Onoja.
Thank you very much for having me, man.
Thank you. And joining us from far away Baku is Dr. Nkiruka Maduekwe, who is Director General and CEO, National Council on Climate Change.
Thank you for having me here. Good morning, everyone.
Is it cold in Baku?
Very cold. They switched off the heating.
You must be looking forward to coming home.
100%.
Let me start with the professor. Prof, this conference is called the COP of Finance. Why?
Well, thank you very much. I think for Nigerians to really appreciate what is going on, let me spend about 1 minute to provide this very solid foundation, because a lot of news about these COPs go on in Nigeria and they seem to misrepresent what is happening there. Briefly, the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change was negotiated in 1992 June in Rio, and one of the 3 major conventions biodiversity and desertification included. And one of the decisions of this convention is that every year all nations will be meeting in what we call the conference, not Congress, conference of parties, to assess what progress we are making, what we need to do, and how do we do about it, to be sure that the impact of the impending, I wouldn't say climate change, impending climate variability and climate change.
Are we not there already?
It's a transition.
Okay.
Let the Nigerians get it clear. If climate change really, it means there will be no rain in Lagos in June, July, August. There will be rain in the north. So that's the. But we are in a transition period of climatic variability, marked climatic variability, which is due to mainly due to human activities. Not only human activities, but mainly due to human activities of releasing a lot of these gases that warm the air consistently. As a result of that agreement, every year since 1994, when the convention came into effect, nations have been meeting, except during the COVID period of 2019, I think. And one of the things that I've seen, I used to lead the Nigerian delegation for adaptation between 2009 and 2018. I decided not to be going again for a number of reasons. But clearly what this one says is that you are going as an equal partner. We all started as scientists in climate change. We all started by saying it is the developed nations that caused the changes by pumping a lot of CO2 into the atmosphere. Gradually, they succeeded in persuading us that we all have a role to play. And the Paris Agreement is emphasizing that particular collective agreement, not the other one that we used to say the developed nations should be the one responsible and they should do everything. Since that one had come on, a lot of things are taking shape. One area I want Nigerians to understand is that when you are going for this negotiation, and a lot of stories go out that we have 1,000 Nigerians, they are not delegates. Only very few Nigerians go as delegates of government.
Okay.
Very few. For adaptation that I used to lead, maybe we only about 4 or 5. But as a Nigerian, even you, as a Nigerian, you may want to go and see what is going on in COP. You will be admitted, but you'll be an observer.
Okay.
You cannot go and negotiate. And I'm really happy that my sister Ayo is always there. He's always covering the thing very well. But it's not a delegate.
Okay.
He cannot negotiate on behalf of Nigeria. So there are very few people that do the negotiation.
People like Dr. Maduekwe.
People like Dr. Madueke, after the minister that is leading the delegation,
yes,
she's next. Okay. So everything that we need to do, she will be the one delegating. Oladipo, you go to this meeting.
Okay.
Muhammad, go to that meeting and not rest. So everything. So once we have that one through, we understand it better now. Okay. So all those 1,000, 10,000, no. But you'll be registered as a Nigerian. So let's clarify that one.
Dr. Maduekwe, how have the negotiations been this year? Have we made any progress?
Right. That is the $1.3 trillion question. We came into this COP, which is the finance COP, to clarify on the new collective quantitative goals, because that stemmed out of Copenhagen, where we had agreed that the countries, the developed countries, had agreed that they were going to give us $100 billion till 2020. So the NCQG was going to be negotiated this year so that they can amplify this commitment that they had made. But as it were, we are still at that space where currently what it is we are seeing at the text is $250 billion per year, which it's... sorry to say, it's I don't want to use any word that shouldn't be said, but it's a huge disappointment. Taking consideration that our goals, our adaptation goals, our NDCs, we have tabulated it at ranging from 5.8 to 5.6 trillion dollars. That's what it is we need to be able to implement our NDCs. And for adaptation, we've raised it up to approximately 400 plus USD per year. And they are committing to just give $250 billion per year. And they are saying that it's going to be shared regionally, equitably. I'm sorry if I'm sounding this way, but we've been here since yesterday night trying to understand, are we going to have a plenary or not? I don't know if this is not the question you asked, but we had the smackdown of it. And checking to see what are we going to go home with. What the position we've put forward, is it going to be taken? One of the first things that has just happened as we sat down here waiting for this interview is that as at yesterday night, the text they had sent was one of the key things they said was they were inviting developing parties to contribute to the finance. But thank God, the text we have just seen now while we're waiting says that they're encouraging parties. Now the question is encouraging and inviting. Which one is stronger? You don't want a situation whereby down the line, the next COP, we're going to see that they have changed the common but differentiated responsibilities and respective capabilities, which is clearly provided for in the convention. You don't want that change because we're a developing country. Straight from the convention, like Prof has said, is the basis for all this negotiation that we're doing. And as Nigeria, as Africa, we come here to say we are developing countries. Our differentiated, respected capabilities should be taken into consideration if you're going to put an amount to the finance. And what kind of finance are you giving us? And this is not what we're seeing, and it's not heartwarming at all.
So, Dr. Onoja, Nigeria just signed the first direct access accreditation agreement. Can you talk us through exactly what that means?
I think that may be the question that the government may be more to talk about.
So I should answer.
Yes, please go ahead, because that's the government question. So I'll end you. So government, please go ahead.
Okay, I'm happy to, and I'm really excited to come in and speak on that because, whoa, that's the only exciting thing I can say. And for years, so just to explain, the GCF, Green Climate Fund, is one of the financing mechanisms that is identified as part of the convention, as part of the financial mechanisms that countries can access finance from. So that's one of it. For years, Nigeria has not really taken a space in that. And DBN is the first Nigerian direct access entity. Now, what this means is that now as a country, we have the ability to say what it is we want with our climate finance and speak to Nigeria's priorities, not the priorities of other MDBs, but our own priority. But however, I want to caution that the access that, or rather what DBN has is with regards to, it doesn't cover grants yet. So it's going to be a concessional finance, basically, concessional funding, but not grants yet. So that's where we are. But that is a huge plus, and that is a really huge milestone for us as a country. Because if we are going to all these conversations about finance that we're talking about, one of the ways we are missing out of it is not having an accredited entity. And having DBN, Development Bank of Nigeria, being accredited is the first step to Nigeria understanding that she needs to set that mechanism in place and putting Nigeria where she needs to be. So that's a plus for us as a country.
Okay, Mr. Onoja, she's talked about priorities. What would you say as a nation our priorities should be when it comes to these climate change issues?
Okay, so I'm going to talk as a nation, and I'm also going to talk about the globe, because we as the nature-based nature conservation organizations, what we want to see is nature being put in whatever thing we are going to do with climate. Because we talk about Prof rightly pointed out about what they call the Rio Trio. That is the three Rio conventions, the synergy that should come together so that at the end of the day, what we are doing will not impact negatively on the other one. Because when you talk about climate change, you talk about desertification, you talk about biodiversity loss, they all stem from kind of the same challenge. So for us to be able to really solve that issues, they must come together. And that is where our concern lies, and that should be our priority, where whatever we are doing will not have a negative effect on the other one. That is why we want nature to be put into climate finance, to be put into our NDCs, to be put into our energy transition, the just energy transition that we're talking about and all of that. So that is a priority, not just for Nigeria, but for the globe. And that is what we as NCF and our other partners are pushing. Because at the end of the day, nature is at the heart of everything that we do. Economics and ecology or ecosystem come from the same root word of echo. And without a healthy ecosystem, there won't be a healthy economy.
That's a good one.
Prof, global climate activists and leaders like Ban Ki-moon have said that the COP needs to be reformed. What kind of reform do you think he's talking about?
All right, I think I cannot but agree more with him. One of the reasons why I don't really bother to go more since 2019 is because the whole structure is such that it's very, very complex and very difficult for developing nations to be able to get through many of these things. As I said earlier, I want to use the opportunity to clarify a lot of things. Many people believe that when you go for this negotiation, you just go and say, this is what Nigeria wants. No, it doesn't operate that way. These negotiations are
particularly since you're asking for money behind what you're asking for.
These negotiations are really done on what we call block basis. We have the European Union, which is a block on its own. We have the umbrella group. It's another block of US, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and others. We have the G77 and China, which is a very complicated organization of poor countries like Nigeria and China together.
How can Nigeria and China be in the same block?
Oh, yes. Because China used to be regarded as a developing country.
Used to be.
Well, it's still a developing country because of one thing or the other. We have what we call the Coalition of Rainforest Group. We have the Environmental Integrity Group. We have the Least Developed Countries Group. We have the...
Are we in that group?
That's where the challenge is. We have the Latin American and the Caribbean group. We have another group of small islands. Like maybe Equatorial Guinea may be one of those, that is a small island that believes it can be wiped away by sea level rise due to climate warming and all the rest. Now, every group now, we take stand on issues and come to the table. It's a negotiation. And the negotiation is so funny that no matter how much you do, like I don't know whether they're finished today, but let's say by this time they've reached an agreement and they now go to plenary to get it stamped. And Fiji, which is maybe less than 1 million people, say, no, I don't agree. That is it. That is it. Everything you've done for 2 weeks is gone. You have to start afresh and to hope for the next COP to be able to do anything meaningful. And once EU and the umbrella group take a stand, those are the ones that have the
money,
the muscle. So it becomes extremely difficult to really get the type of thing that developing nations will be looking for. So the type of reform that may be there, I'm not too sure of what it will be exactly, but I think it has to be in such a way that all sides may have to shift here and there. If developing nations are just talking about money always, it may not work that way. The developed nations should not also see developing nations as beggars, but that this is a collective responsibility. A collective responsibility, but where every nation or every region will have their own responses based on their capacity and their contribution. Africa, for instance, we are contributing only about 3% of the so-called greenhouse gases. But they will tell us that, oh, by the time you remove all your logging and deforestation and, poor management of land and everything, a lot of emissions are coming from land use. By the time you add that one, so you will not be emitting
so in another words, we are also culpable.
Exactly. So, and this is what the Paris, if you heard the word that Nkirika mentioned, the Council DG, collective. We are talking about new collective quantified goal. The word collective means what? All of us are responsible. So if therefore the developing nations are asking for $1.2 trillion between now and 2030, and the EU and the other group are saying we can maybe go to about 250 billion. You see the gap already. Now, how do you get the people to understand each other in that regard? And that's where the whole knot became very difficult last night. And I don't know whether they have been able to untie the knot. Maybe Dr. Nkruka will be able to elaborate.
Nkruka, can you tell us more about that? What did you achieve last night?
Well, that's what I'm saying. We're actually in the middle of it. That's what I was explaining early on, that we got the text we've just recently received has made an adjustment with regards to from telling us, inviting us to now encouraging the developing countries. So, but it hasn't changed its position with regards to the 250 billion. So what we are saying as an African bloc and G77 is that you have to make more effort. We're not seeing that on the part of the developed countries. The developing countries are not saying we are not going to take up our own side of the ship. We're not going to row our own part. No. But what the developing countries are saying, please, can you understand that first and foremost, we are paying a debt we never owed? We didn't cause this, because even the convention is very clear that compared to the prehistoric and current emissions that the developed countries own is high. And also the convention recognized that in our own development, we are going to do a bit of emission. But even as it were, till today, in current terms, developing countries' emission still compared to developed countries is not even the same. It's not at the same level.
Yeah.
So what we're simply saying as developing countries is, listen, we're going to do our own bit. You're telling us to have ambitious NDCs, but you're not providing the financial mechanism. You're not providing the financial instruments. You're giving us loans. You're giving us debts. You're not giving us concessional finance. You're not giving us grants. We're talking about adaptation. And what we're saying is that the reason why we're highly vulnerable to the impact of climate change is because we have low adaptive capacity. So we need to build our adaptive capacity. And to be able to do that, we need funds. And these guys they're not shifting grounds at all. And that's where we are. And like Prof said, if one country says, I no agree, now so it go take B. Since yesterday night, we have been here. We were supposed to have had the plenary by 10 a.m. They've moved it. We're not so sure to maybe 5 p.m. But the truth is, we are here.
Okay.
And is a tactics that they do. They do these taxes to ensure that you get tired, you leave, and by the time they make this decision midnight, nobody is there to say no. But I think Africans have taken a different stance. We're here because this concerns us.
Okay. We talked earlier about the direct access accreditation agreement. Another one is the agreement on carbon markets. Is this good for Nigeria?
So what these negotiations did was to handle a number of things. For us as the African group of negotiations, we're looking at authorization. We're looking at additionalities. So those areas, some of the things we asked for were addressed. Some of the things we asked for were not addressed. But for us, it doesn't take, how will I put it now? It's important, but remember that carbon market is not climate finance. There are two different things. It's a way you can, of course, there's a potential for us to benefit from that as a country. That's another means of non-oil revenue for us. But it is not climate finance. These two things should not be mistaken. So I just want to say that, yes, that there are aspects that have been, aspects that we have negotiated for that has shown in the text as it is. We're still expecting more text. The one for NCQG has just come up. We're still expecting more. So I won't be able to touch on those ones. I'm able to touch on NCQG because I just saw it now before we joined the interview.
Okay. Mr. Onoja, you are more for conservation. In all of this, how do you think we should move on?
Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, we won't make much progress if we don't put nature in it. For instance, we are talking about the just transition. How are we going to do all of this without destroying nature? And we're going to get some rare earth metals. Where are we going to source these rare earth metals from? It so happens that some of these rare earth metals occur where there are the areas of high biodiversity. And how are we going to sustainably get these things without destroying nature? And that is why we are saying that we should all come together and see how we'll be able to work out all of these solutions without necessarily destroying the other part of it. And that is where, that is our concern. I just mentioned about the rare earth metals. And even if I take solar panels, for instance, if we want to place solar panels, are we going to destroy forests to be able to place them? So, and that is why we, with our partners, we've come up with some tools that will be able to help that. We have tools like avian sensitive mapping tools. We have what we call the IBAT, Integrated Biodiversity Assessment tools, that will be able to help in all of these things, so that you place your infrastructure where it will not have negative effects on biodiversity and nature. Because at the end of the day, nature-based solutions are one of the areas that has really been it's a proven mechanism, or a proven way for us to be able to combat all of these issues of climate change that we are talking about. And that is where our concern is, and that's why we are following this very closely. And even in the finance mechanisms, we are ensuring that because sometimes you can just say, oh, you want to talk about finances, but if you don't put nature at the heart of it, once you get the money, you just run wild and then destroy nature in that regard. And that's what our major concern is.
Now, Prof, 1.3 trillion, 250 billion, they are miles apart. How hopeful are you that developing countries are going to get what they're asking for, or anything near it?
All right, let me briefly tell you a story that may tell you what may happen. And I will not be surprised by this time. Tomorrow is Sunday. Yeah, maybe by Sunday morning, around 2 or 3 a.m., you hear an announcement of a breakthrough.
Why a.m.?
Will you be tired? By that time, but whatever comes your way, you have to go home. In 2009, one of the most intriguing negotiations in Copenhagen, we were negotiating all kinds of things. No road forward. When they saw that the North was really time and becoming naughtier than ever before, all of a sudden, President Obama showed up. And that announcement came, bam. We'll be willing to give 100 billion per year till 2030, over a period of time. We all clapped. Till today, I don't think America contributed up to 40 million, a billion. That's something that was supposed to be 100 billion
every year.
Every year.
So it's one thing to ask for a certain amount. It's another thing for a particular amount to be said,
exactly,
and then getting the actual.
I wouldn't be surprised, because I started hearing figures like 600 billion by yesterday evening. So we may end up with about 600 billion, because everybody will be tired, and it's better than nothing.
Yeah.
We might end up with that one. But what is important, and what Nigeria needs to do as well, maybe run out of time now, is this. Climate change, as climate change on its own, it doesn't make any sense. Let us see climate change as a development issue. One of the things we are not doing right is that we cannot even quantify how much of our national resources we are really using to tackle the challenge. And I think this is where we are missing the point. As you mentioned, for instance, during the conservation thing that I had Dr. Onoja about, if we're able to take the coastal region, for instance, and emphasize the need for the conservation of our mangrove forest.
Yeah.
These are the buffers that God created to make sure that even if the sea level is rising, we have plants that can absorb the salt and everything, will not allow it to destroy. But we have cleared most of this. Where they are not cleared, they are polluted by oil and all the rest. So Nigeria needs to take climate change as a development challenge. Lagos State has to take climate change as a development challenge. Don't bother about whether you are going to get billions of dollars or there. Will you wait till Lagos is flooded completely and you can't move anymore? The answer is no. What do we need to do? We already know now that based on all projections, the temperature will continue. Even if we stop green gas emission now, which is not possible, what is already in the system will continue to make this atmospheric system crazy. So we'll still be getting occasional, very heavy storms that will be leading to flooding. So Lagos should prepare itself, for instance, that every year all the states along the coast, there will be flooding. Whether it happens or not It's a precaution. There will be flooding. What do we need to do? And how do we reduce its impact? If we address it from that point of view, then we say, okay, how much money am I giving Minister of Environment, Minister of Water Resources, Minister of Coastal Management, whatever the ministries are, to work towards reducing the impact of flood in Lagos? That type of money, you put it on the table. When we are not discussing, Lagos comes up and say, for my budget of 2025, I'm putting down 500 billion naira towards mitigating flood, reducing the drainage problem we have in this area, making sure that my agriculture, even in the remaining land that's available, is not destroyed by heavy rainfall, making sure that the people in the urban environment are not completely flooded away, making sure that ABC happen. That type of money, by the time Lagos does that, Ondo does it, Kano does it, all the 36 states are able to show every year that this is the amount of money we are using to reduce, like the type of drought that happened in the north central part this year. A lot of agricultural land got burnt off completely because of the extended.
It's November and it's still raining.
Because it didn't rain when it was supposed to rain the right time. That's the type of variability we are talking about. But if the people, the states are now saying, because of this, we recognize that drought may be a problem or flood may be a problem, this is what we are doing to make our agriculture resilient to the impact of climate change. This is the type of thing we are putting together. All such money, by the time we put it for the 36 states, Nigeria will be seen to be spending a lot of money on adapting. We are not talking about
we look inwards.
Exactly.
And see what we can do. Because the people that we are going to meet and having these meetings with, sometimes they have their own preconceived arrangement.
Not only that, I mean, the road that was washed away in Jigawa as a result of the heavy floods, unexpected heavy floods that happened as a result of the warming of the atmosphere that dumped a lot of water there. Are they coming to repair the road for us?
No. Well, Dr. Madwekwe, yes. We're winding down now. So what are your expectations at the end of the day?
Yeah, thank you so much. I just permit me to just address a number of things that have been raised.
We don't have time.
Yes, I'll be very
Except
fast.
You can do that in a minute.
I'll try. My minute gone. But just wanted to say that the law already has nature-based solutions, and it's very firm that nature-based solutions is one of the things Nigeria is looking to address our climate change actions. So the issues that Dr. Onoja raised is there. Concerning what the issues that Professor raised, the Act also has a climate change fund. With the climate change funds, we're able to attract that finance that we need. And I'm also using this opportunity to call out to states to please adopt the climate change law. Now, what this happens is that if every state, for instance, imagine if a state like Lagos State had a climate change fund. Now, with that climate change fund, Lagos State is able to attract finance from multilateral funding, attract finance. Of course, when the national state legislative puts in money there, it's very clear that they're putting in money into climate change fund. Climate change fund will help address adaptation and mitigation issue. Climate change fund will also help us as a country to know which projects, to say this is how much Nigeria as an entity is putting to address climate change fund. We're not going to be questioning that amount anymore. So what are the steps we're taking as a secretariat out of this COP29? One, the need to synergize our existing NDC implementation framework. This says what our costing for is with all the priorities areas. Number two, the energy transition plan, which also says the costing for energy transition. Number three, the net zero plan as well, to converge everything together so that, and including the intergovernmental, another finance one again, sorry, but to convert all these things together and so that Nigeria can have one strategic finance plan, climate change finance plan. Now, let me tell you what this will do. What this will do to the international community is that Nigeria is ready for business, because Nigeria has been able to outline her bankable pipeline of projects and has been able to cost out from adaptation to mitigation and say this is how much we need to identify to help us to build that resilience that Prof was talking about, to help us to also drive our just and equitable transition. So in 1 minute.
No, you took 1 minute, 15 seconds.
Thank you very much for coming to tell us about COP29 and coming to tell us about climate change in general. That was Dr. Nkiru Kamadu-Ekwe, Director General and CEO, National Council on Climate Change, who joined us from Baku, Azerbaijan. And we also had Dr. Joseph Onoja, Director General, Nigerian Conservation Foundation. He also joined us virtually. And then we had Professor Emmanuel Oladipo, who was with us in the studio. He's an environment expert. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And you in Baku, have a safe trip back. And Dr. Onoja, welcome back from Baku.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you.
And thank you for staying with us. We shall be right back after this short break with the lifestyle segment. Don't go away.
Fatherhood.